Welcome back to another episode, all. In this episode, we're going to take a little look at where Autism Speaks has its dirty little fingers. I came across someone online recently and went saying that Autism Speaks has no controversy whatsoever. And I think it's just a little infringement who sees Autism Speaks as a hate group. So we're going to take a look at where Autism Speaks has its dirty little fingers and actually see some of the controversy and how it came. First of all, Autism Speaks was founded in 2005, and that's when the dirty work began, and it's still ongoing today. All their dirty work is. Just allow me to turn to a book to my right first. Called The Autism Industrial Complex. This will be quite a long read. What I'm going to read out to you. So please be patient. Right. I quote. If the non-profit cooperation BACB has been hard at work behind the scenes for the past couple of decades establishing both the professional and commercial legitimacy of ABA practitioners and therefore of ABA as an industry, the non-profit cooperation Autism Speaks has been just as hard at work, albeit more visible and public-facing ways, for the last decade and a half, laying and institutionalizing the broader rhetorical, policy, and legislative architecture of the AIC in general, but ultimately in service of the interests of both the intervention and prevention industries. Just as the BACB certificants are currently engaged in coordinated state-level lobbying for passage of its Model Licensure Act, so too did Autism Speaks play a central role in coordinated and successful state-level lobbying for passage of its boilerplate legislation constituting ABA as medically necessary and therefore required to be funded by health insurance treatment for autism. And although the BACB has existed for longer than Autism Speaks, it was Autism Speaks that took the lead and modelled the cooperate playbook for coordinated legislative lobbying that the BACB undoubtedly learned from and in many ways has successfully emulated. Also categorized as 501c3 non-profit charity by the US IRS and therefore prohibited from legislative lobbying, Autism Speaks has operated with far less circumspection than the BACB did in its early years. According to the IRS, in general, no organization may qualify for Section 501c3 status if a substantial part of its activities in attempting to influence legislation, commonly known as lobbying, a 501c3 organization may engage in some lobbying, but too much lobbying activity risks loss of tax-exempt status. Organizations may, however, involve themselves in issues on public policy without the activity being considered as lobbying. For example, organizations may conduct educational meetings, prepare and distribute educational materials, or otherwise consider public policy issues in an uneducational manner without jeopardizing their tax-exempt status. End of quote. I'll just pause there for now. I'll be turning back to that. So up to now, you see of how they're doing activities. They're already engaged together, got their fingers in ABA, working together, their fingers in the genomic research, and we see that it's going into the Autism Industrial Complex. If you just allow me to share my screen, and we'll take a look at their board directors, we just want to say. So if we just take a look at the board directors here. So first of all, it says, the first one's Curtis Arledge. Curtis Arledge, Treasurer and Secretary of the Autism Speaks Board, is the Chief Executive Officer of Marina Investment Group. Prior to that, he was the Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of BNY Mellon Investment Management. Additionally, he was responsible for the BNY Mellon Wealth Management. Before Mr. Arledge joined BNY Mellon in November 2010, he was the Chief Investment Officer for fundamental fixed income portfolios at BlackRock Inc. He joined BlackRock Inc. from Witchville Corporation, where he was the global head of the fixed income division within the bank's corporate and investment banking group. I'm sure you're beginning to see that this is to do with money. If you just allow me to go a bit further down. Judy this time. Judy Bernadette is a distinguished former consultant and accomplished venture capitalist with an educational background encompassing Wellesley College and Harvard Business School. You'll find that as we go down from one board director to another, you're going to find that they are all capitalists, all of them on the board, but not actually autistic. So if you just allow sharing for now. Now, I'm just going to turn to a separate book by called The Autistic Community and the Neurodiversity Movement. There was an individual in the past who worked for Autism Speaks who was autistic, is autistic, called J.E. Robinson. And I'm just going to read something he had to say. He contributed towards this book to share his experience. Right, I quote, "After the meeting, I expected to hear something from Jerry Dawson. Perhaps they'd want me to attend their board meeting to explain this proposed mission change. The main Autism Speaks board meeting came and went, and nothing happened. I called Jerry. They were not ready to hear that," she told me. "The resolution had never even been discussed. I was deeply disappointed and sad." A few months later, Jerry left for a new job running the Autism Center at Duke University. I was sorry to see her go, but I understood as I shared her frustration with the group's fixation on what I believe we both saw as unhealthy ideas. Rob Ring, a former pharmaceutical executive, was named to take her place. In October of that year, 2013, Autism Speaks announced an Autism Summit to be held in Washington, D.C. Significantly, there was not a single autistic person scheduled for attendance. Then in early November, Autism Speaks founder Suzanne Wright followed that up with a truly horrific op-ed. In it, she suggested that millions of autistic people were lost, taken from society by the monster, autism. She said families and people like me were barely living. The response from autistic people was predictable. I found her article extremely offensive. It made me think of the I Am Autism piece they had published 4 years previously. Worst of all, people in the autism community blamed me for being complicit in the newest Autism Speaks debacle. More than 100 people wrote me to ask how I could be associated with an organization that promulgated ideas like rights. That was a question I could not answer because I felt the same way. In addition, I felt a deep sadness, realizing my 4 years of advocacy work within the organization had not made one bit of a difference to the Wrights, who headed the organization. I wrote a letter to Liz Feld, the president. In my letter, I said, Autism Speaks is never going to be accepted by the broader community of autistic people if they continue the fear-mongering and sick child talk. This kind of talk does not do any of us any good. The idea that Mrs. Wright would once again convene a summit without any meaningful autistic representation is extremely troubling to me, particularly because we've covered this issue before. I'm starting to feel like Mrs. Wright is a very different place than most of the people I see in the autism community. Is Autism Speaks going to be able to shift its focus away from her diseased child model to focus on consulting with autistic people of all ages about how their needs might be best served in a non-fear-driven environment? End of quote. Then that individual, the one autistic individual who was working for them, left. As he pointed out in his statements there, that it was a fear-mongering place. He was very sad with it himself, that he'd worked there for 4 years, that the autistic community was blaming him, that he was feeling condemned by autistic people, and he wasn't surprised about why they were condemning him. So there's already some part. Now, where he mentioned I am autism, I'm just going to show you a video.
I am autism. I'm visible in your children, but if I can help it, I am invisible to you until it's too late. I know where you live, and guess what? I live there too. I hover around all of you. I know no color barrier, no religion, no morality, no currency. I speak your language fluently, and with every voice I take away, I acquire yet another language. I work very quickly. I work faster than pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined. And if you are happily married, I will make sure that your marriage fails. Your money will fall into my hands, and I will bankrupt you for my own self-gain. I don't sleep, so I make sure you don't either. I will make it virtually impossible for your family to easily attend a temple, a birthday party, a public park, without a struggle, without embarrassment, without pain. You have no cure for me. Your scientists don't have the resources, and I relish their desperation. Your neighbors are happier to pretend that I don't exist, of course, until it's their child. I am autism. I have no interest in right or wrong. I derive great pleasure out of your loneliness. I will fight to take away your hope. I will plot to rob you of your children and your dreams. I will make sure that every day you wake up, you will cry, wondering who will take care of my child after I die. And the truth is, I am still winning, and you are scared, and you should be. I am autism. You ignored me. That was a mistake.
And to autism I say,
I am a father,
a mother, a grandparent,
a brother,
a sister.
We will spend every waking hour trying to weaken you.
We don't need sleep because we will not rest until you do.
Family can be much stronger than autism ever anticipated, and we will not be intimidated by you, nor will the love and strength of my community.
I am a parent riding towards you, and you can push me off this horse time and time again, but I will get up, climb back on, and ride on with the message.
Autism, you forget who we are. You forget who you are dealing with. You forget the spirit of mothers and daughters and fathers and sons.
We are
We
the
are the United States.
We are Argentina.
We are Russia.
The European Union.
We are the United Nations.
We are coming together in all climates.
We call on all faiths.
We search with technology,
And voodoo.
prayer, and
Herbs, genetic studies.
And a growing awareness you never anticipated.
We have had challenges, but we are the best when overcoming them.
we speak the only language that matters, love for our children.
Our capacity to love is greater than your capacity to overwhelm.
Autism is naive.
You are alone. We are a community of warriors.
We have a voice.
You think because some of our children cannot speak, we cannot hear them? That is autism's weakness.
You think that because my child lives behind a wall, I am afraid to knock it down with my bare hands?
You have not properly been introduced to this community of parents and grandparents, of siblings and friends, and school teachers, therapists, pediatricians, and scientists.
Autism, if you are not scared, you should be.
When you came for my child, you forgot.
You came for me.
Autism, are you listening?
I'll be going back to another video in a moment there.
I had
Right. We'll be listening to this woman in a moment. She's the founder of Autism Speaks. Well, one of them. And notice what her advertisement just said. Family is much stronger than autism. Autism, you cannot beat us. Oh, we are so loving. We love our children. But listen to this.
Sat in the car for about 15 minutes and actually contemplated putting Jody in the car and driving off the George Washington Bridge.
Oh my, putting your autistic daughter in the car and driving her off the George Washington Bridge. That's love. Those out there thinking Autism Speaks has no controversy. How is that not controversial?
It's only because of Lauren, the fact that I have another child, that I probably didn't do it.
Yes, precisely. Don't believe the lies that they say. I'll go back onto there in a minute. So now I'm just going to turn back to the first book I was quoting from. Notice about that video I said at the end, they're just in it for your money. When you go on their website, one of the very first things that comes up is funding. Like you can click their funding and we'll take a look at that shortly. So I'm just going to continue now from what Alicia Broderick writes. I quote, I am no tax lawyer, but the term substantial seems to be doing a lot of rhetorical work in this description. It is clear that Autism Speaks has routinely engaged in legislative lobbying for the past 15 years, beginning with its support of the Combating Autism Act in 2006, and shortly thereafter with its coordination of nationwide state-level lobbying for health insurance funding of ABA. However, since Autism Speaks undoubtedly has a cadre of highly qualified corporate tax lawyers, just as I showed you their board directors, all capitalists, at its disposal, presumably care was taken to ensure that these efforts were not substantial enough to risk its 501c3 tax-exempt status. Or perhaps the organization was simply educating lawmakers about why they need to pass certain pieces of legislation. I posited in an earlier publication that Autism Speaks had made two key contributions to autism rhetoric and therefore politics. In its first 5 years of incorporation, the first a rhetorical theme and the latter a rhetorical tactic, and the latter of which was arguably the more influential contribution. The first contribution was its ubiquitous rhetorical constitution of autism as enemy through relentless metaphoric media, representations of autism as disease, epidemic, and abductor, as discussed in Chapter 6 and elsewhere. The second was its skillful, systematic, pervasive, and global deployment of these and other rhetorical devices through its corporate style, neoliberal market approach to not only cultural and political rhetoric, but also legislative and policy lobbying. However, what my earlier analysis failed to do was to adequately analyze the relationship between those two rhetorical contributions. That is, I earlier analysed the tactics, but not the strategy of these two central pillars of Autism Speaks' activism in the early 2000s. In keeping with Dolmage's remind that rhetorical analysis must be strategic, that is, they must offer critical analysis of the larger patterns and plans that orchestrate possibilities. I analysed the larger patterns and plans deployed by Autism Speaks and subsequently successfully emulated by BACB. Autism Speaks didn't create this strategy. The larger patterns and plans that orchestrate particular possibilities, they merely took a page from the broader neoliberal playbook. My earlier rhetorical analysis was grounded primarily in cultural politics. The present analysis in political economy, industries hire lobbyists, and lobbyists deploy PR and media initiatives to pursue their aims. The overarching strategy connecting these two rhetorical contributions becomes obvious when examined through the lens of the AIC. That is, when one understands the agenda and activities of Autism Speaks, not as those of an organization involved in autism advocacy and science, but rather of those of a powerful corporate-style lobbyist for the autism, both intervention and prevention industries. As discussed in Chapter 6, the first 5 years of Autism Speaks produced ubiquitous and menacing PSAs, fundraising films, and media blitzes, all apparently designed to groom media consumers to identify with and feel the fear of non-autistic parents, to loosen their own wallets by contributing to fundraising initiatives, and to back, or at least not block, Autism Speaks' legislative agenda. For example, Autism Speaks produced in 2007 an awareness or propaganda, depending upon your perspective, fundraising music video featuring the band 5 for Fighting titled A World Where, asking, what kind of world do you want? And answering that rhetorical question with several stated aspirations, including a world where no family has to live with autism. Just after the vocalist sings the lyric, "Be careful what you wish for," this music video ends somehow and ridiculously, apparently unironically, with the superimposed text, "Autism Speaks wants a world where autism is a word in the history books." Later, in 2008, the long-term goal of eliminating autism was articulated even more pointedly by Autism Speaks co-founder Suzanne Wright, as I hope to ultimately eradicate autism for the sake of future generations. If we continue our current trajectory, we'll get there in my lifetime. Suzanne Wright died in 2016, her goal of eradicating autism within her lifetime unachieved. Just remember the date 2016 because we're going to come back to that later. Now I'll continue. First, a central explicitly espoused goal of Autism Speaks from its inception has been to cure, eradicate, or otherwise eliminate autism in the future, creating a future world in which autism is only a word in the history books. During those first 5 years, many autistic activists and academics, myself included, were reactively responding to the dehumanizing, fear-mongering rhetoric of Autism Speaks, as if the organization were merely unimaginably ignorant and needed to be better educated about the perspectives and agendas of autistic people. But cultural fear-mongering has been a tried and true tactic of fundraising and electoral politics since time immemorial. Why on earth wouldn't it have been deployed in this case? What autism's early ontological history should have taught us is that autism is apparently almost infinitely malleable, and within capitalism, this history should only have taught us that in many ways, autism is what we need autism to be. Autism is as autism does. Autism Speaks from its inception has been advancing the interest of the autism industries, and it has served a uniquely outsized role in institutionalizing both the rhetorical, ideological, as well as the material economic architecture of the AIC. Because of that unique role, bridging both rhetoric and economic architecture, we can see the ways in which the former has always been deployed in service of the latter, and therein lies the rhetorical strategy. Arguably, Autism Speaks so aggressively produced media for widespread consumption that constituted autism as a disease, an epidemic disease, no less, not because anyone necessarily believed the repeatedly asserted equations with cancer or diabetes, what we just saw in one of those videos. So there's the evidence, neither of which involved epidemic spread either, but rather because they needed it to be ontologically cast as disease if the second prong of their strategy were to be successful. Lobbying for legislation that would streamline the harvesting of health insurance, funding as a steady stream of third-party funding for ABA intervention. If health insurance funding were identified early on as a potential revenue stream to subsidize access to ABA intervention, then it would be necessary to invest some time and media saturation in the production and consumption of autism as disease. And look at those adverts Autism Speaks did. That's certainly media. In order to make the subsequent argument that ABA intervention was medically necessary and therefore logically appropriately funded by health insurance dollars. End of quote. So, yeah, from the beginning, all of ABA and Autism Speaks work together, both of them. But you'll find ABA therapists going and saying that, oh no, we've got nothing to do with Autism Speaks. But Autism Speaks directly and only ensures ABA, puts the funding towards ABA and so on. And as ABA providers like to say, electroshock therapy, electroconvulsive therapy is not ABA. But Autism Speaks works directly with the Judge Rottenberg Center. Now, I'm going to show you what goes on in the Judge Rottenberg Center on a video. If you just allow me to share again. Be a little longer. Just a warning.
These are our caramel-filled chocolate quail's eggs with a beautiful white chocolate dressing.
Tonight, we have a CBS News investigation into the use of electric shock to change harmful behaviors in children and adults with development disabilities, including autism. The method has been used for more than 20 years, and each case is approved by a state judge. But recently, the United Nations likened the method to torture, and now the FDA is considering a ban. The shock method is used in only one school, the private Judge Rothenberg Center near Boston. Anna Werner went inside to hear from those who support the method and from others, including former student Jennifer Masumba, who told the FDA that the school has gone too far.
How many times a day do you think you were shocked?
In the beginning, I was shocked every day.
Jennifer Masumba has autism. For 7 years, she lived here at the Judge Rothenberg Center in Massachusetts, where she wore a backpack like this one, sometimes 24 hours a day. Inside is a device attached to electrodes that deliver a shock whenever a staffer presses a button on a remote carried on their belt. The center claims it stops bad or aggressive behavior.
I felt like I was being punished for being born. That's what it feels like. Because I was disabled, I was being punished.
Part of Masumba's treatment plan was for staffers to draw up a list of prohibited behaviors, ranging from headbanging to hand movements, for which she could be shocked.
I would get like 5 or 10 shocks for just doing one thing.
What was that like?
That was like being under the ground in hell.
The center's use of electric shock came under scrutiny in 2012 after this videotape was presented in a court case. It showed 17-year-old Andre McCollins, seen here in the upper right-hand corner, tied to a restraint board by his arms and legs, then shocked 31 times. Andre is now 29. His mother, Cheryl McCollins, settled a lawsuit against the center, but says her son has suffered permanent damage, and she wants shock treatment outlawed.
It doesn't work. Shock them out of autism, what is that going to do? Inflicting pain, it's like you're making the injury worse.
The center says it no longer uses the restraint board in combination with shocks, but they insist a program of electric shocks they compare to a bee sting, works better than medication to stop people with severe disabilities from injuring themselves or others. They point to residents such as 20-year-old Joshua Wood, who has severe autism. His parents are Sharon and Roger Wood.
He would just go into severe rages that he could not control. He would grab his head and cry. And so my daughter, ourselves, we would lock ourselves in the bedroom and just hope that Josh wouldn't hurt himself.
So when they talk about parents being desperate, I mean, you evidently know exactly what that feels like.
You have to understand the entire journey. From day one, as a parent, you do everything imaginable, unimaginable, whatever I mean, sometimes you grasp at straws.
Has he told you what it's like?
He's nonverbal.
Have a hug? Give me a hug.
High five there, buddy. All right.
Joshua's parents say he's now able to participate in activities like this lunch set up by the school.
I was just so thrilled to see the difference in him and to be able to see him smile that I was just like, this is a godsend.
As he ate, a staffer with a remote control for the shock device stood nearby.
Have you seen him get shocked?
No.
Neither of you.
No, we've seen him like right after, and he's been totally fine. Like when we've come to visit the school or come to pick him up.
Jennifer Masumba says parents don't see everything that happens at the center. She says shocks were often given at random, and she says her own mother did not know she went through experiences similar to that seen on the video of Andre McCollins before she left in 2009.
That hurt. Can you describe it for me?
It's so scary. I would ask God to make my heart stop because I didn't want to live when that was happening to me. I just wanted to die and make it stop.
Do you think that the students fear the shock?
No, I don't.
Glenda Crooks is the center's director.
When you put that device on them, it's they're not hurting themselves anymore. They're not hurting other people anymore, and their affect just changes. Like, no, I don't think they're afraid of it.
But it is painful to them.
It is painful. It is painful.
And you think they don't fear that?
I don't. You need to experience the day-to-day goings on, and it happens so few and far between. It's very rare that someone gets an application. They know what they get the application for, so it's not a fearful thing.
It's easy to control people when you hurt them. That's easy. That's all they've ever done.
Masumba now lives at a group home in Florida, where her therapy includes playing the piano and positive feedback reinforcement.
Anna, what's become of Jennifer Masumba's case?
Well, Scott, Jennifer Masumba is now suing the Judge Rotenberg Center. We asked center officials about her case. They told us that she did well there and, in fact, sent positive emails to the center after leaving in 2009. But Jennifer Masumba says it took her 2 years to process her experience there and recover from what she calls abuse.
Fascinating story. Thank you, Anna. We have more on all of this on our CBS News website, cbsnews.com. And CBS This Morning will continue our coverage first.
That still goes on this day, all the shock therapy, which while the neurodiversity movement is still running a campaign called Stop the Shock. But we've got those who oppose neurodiversity going and seeing this as acceptable. And they come to the Autism Investor Summit every year. If you just look up above. Yeah, and they get praised for it by the ABA, the BACB, Behaviour Analyst Certification Board. That is all still part of it, and Autism Speaks is to do with them. Now, if we go onto Autism Speaks' website, we'll take a look at a few other places where their fingers are and where they're getting their money from. As Alicia Broderick mentioned about the prevention industry. Let's see if we just go up a bit. Right, so it goes to topics. It's like the key topics of it. What is Autism Speaks policy of identity first or person first language? And how does Autism Speaks help autistic people? We're going to go through a few of these things. And you can even see where it says, why did Autism Speaks remove the I am autism video? We're going to read through a few of these. So, yes. How does Autism Speaks help autistic people? Autism Speaks is dedicated to creating an inclusive world for all individuals with autism throughout their lifespan. We do this through advocacy, services, support, research, and innovation, and advances in care for autistic individuals and their families. Now, just to point out, where it says through advocacy, notice that it's the board directors they're referring to there. So they are not actually promoting self-advocacy of autistic people advocating on behalf of themselves. They're promoting on the non-autistic parents advocating. Yeah, so they're absolutely against the Autism Self-Advocacy Network because they don't want autistic people to advocate for ourselves because they know that we don't want what they want. So if we go a bit further down, right. What does Autism Speaks fund? As you can see here, as a charitable organisation, that's metaphorical, it is important that we are good stewards of our donor funding and support. We pride ourselves on the fact that 86 cents of every dollar donated to Autism Speaks goes directly to research. So research like the prevention industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the intervention industry, ABA, electroconvulsive therapy in the Judge Rotenberg Center, advocacy, but like I said, the advocacy is for non-autistic parents. It's not actually for autistic people. For programs and services for those who are not autistic. Each year we have exceeded the Better Business Bureau guidelines for charitable credibility and aided more than 1.6 million autistic people and their families through free services and supports. If they're going and accepting donations, funding all the time, while also violating the lobbyist code 501, for example, as Alicia Broderick pointed out, through all their fear-mongering advertisements, they're not exactly doing all this service for free. If they're only going to provide ABA as the do so, put funding towards that, they're not exactly providing all that can be provided. They're actually providing things which autistic people have said to be torture. Right. Now if we go a bit further down, it says, how has Autism Speaks evolved over the years? Notice the 2005, the first 5 years, as Alicia Broderick pointed out, the individual who I read from the second book, who worked for them, remember he spoke about the date 2013. Right, so we have evolved as an organisation as we learned more about autism and the lived experiences of autistic people. When we were founded in 2005, less was known about autism and the way it impacts people. In fact, in 2005, the prevalence was 1 in 166, and today the prevalence is 1 in 36. 1 in 36 in the US, and they only help thousands of people. In 2013, the autism umbrella widened to encompass several diagnoses, including autistic disorder, Asperger's syndrome, childhood disintegrative disorder, and pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. Yeah, that's when they caused a big problem putting Asperger's under the same one. With this broadened definition, the number of people represented by an autism diagnosis expanded considerably. And with this came more perspectives and points of view of what it means to be on the spectrum. Actually, no, more points didn't come, the points were already there. But Autism Speaks was fear-mongering everyone about it, claiming it's an epidemic disease. Like they produced a chart they did, where in the 1994, when the DSM 4th edition came out and added Asperger's to it, they made this chart which goes right like a U-shape, a squared chart, where it looks like the rate was rapidly increasing, as such as look from 2005, they claim it was 1 in 166, but now 1 in 36. Now you've got to imagine that's quite a rapid increase on a graph. They showed that graph to terrify the public, to empty the public's wallets. They misused statistics and data in order to empty everyone's wallets. And notice that still this day, all the board directors are capitalists who are directly associated with capitalizing on people. Autism affects people in many ways, and no two experiences are exactly alike. We know that what works for some may not work for others. Now, question them there. Why do they only want to ensure ABA then, when they confess it doesn't work for everyone? We've listened carefully to our supporters as well as our critics over the years. We're going to find out that's actually in there. We've learned a lot. Yes, we've learned a lot, and they've decided to misuse and abuse that knowledge. And we're continuing to learn about autism spectrum disorder, the evolving needs of the autism community, and how we can help. All points of view are important. We are working to ensure the entire community feels heard. No, they're not. Because like Asna have confessed, they want to be the advocates. They don't want autistic people themselves to be advocates. From autistic individuals who can advocate for themselves to parents and caregivers, advocating for their loved ones, we believe it is our role to see, hear, and embrace their stories. While they don't seem to embrace our stories, such as Jennifer, who was on the video I just showed you of the news channel, they haven't embraced her story about stopping shock therapy. But we're still doing the shock list there and supporting the Judge Rottenberg Centre. We hope that some of the discord in the community can eventually be replaced and shared commitment among all of us who are working to support autistic people and their families to creating a better world where all people with autism can reach their full potential. Actually, we also know that part's also false. They're not doing that. They're doing it to make autistic kids become what the parents want the kids to be, not full potential. Because what an autistic person's full potential is doesn't satisfy what the parents want. And Autism Speaks is more to do with the parents and more to do with the business, the capitalism. So if we just go a bit further down. Right. Why did Autism Speaks remove cure from its mission and research? Since our founding in 2005, we've evolved as an organisation as we learned more about autism and the lived experiences of autistic people. It was the right decision to remove searching for a cure from our mission and instead focus on providing advocacy and support. Notice that providing the advocacy, not helping individuals advocate for themselves, but they want to be the leaders, the ones in advocacy. Because if you think about it, if they go to autism acceptance and accept autism, they'll be wiped out of business. Increasing understanding and acceptance and advancing research for the autistic community. What kind of research is what you've got to ask? The research into the prevention industry, the genomic research and so on. 86% of it goes to all that, and less than 1% is actually spent to help autistic individuals altogether. So how is that not controversial? You see of how they're trying to hide where their fingers actually are. Their fingers are in the Judge Rottenberg Centre. Their fingers are in the prevention industry. They've got their fingers in the pharmaceutical industry. They've got their fingers in the autism research industry. Actually going that way. Now onto the why we removed the I Am Autism video from our channels. They didn't remove it for why they're saying here. This video is nowhere reflective of the Autism Speaks of today. The video was posted in 2009, and remember Alicia Broderick mentioned the first 5 years of all the fear-mongering, and removed shortly thereafter. And from what I quoted from Professor Alicia Broderick's book, do you remember her saying that her and other activists, other academics, those of the researchers were shouting at Autism Speaks that all this is dehumanizing and wrong? So clearly they were intentionally doing that which was wrong. But this was no accident what they were doing. It was all plotted and planned. We do not share or distribute it. This video has been a great regret in the history of our organisation. It's clearly not a great regret in their history and organisation, otherwise they wouldn't be continuing all the capitalism and commodification. And we deeply apologise to those who we offended by it, who we offended with it. Actually, no, they're not very apologetic besides the ones who left, such as the individual quoted from the autistic community and the neurodiversity movement, but the autistic individual who actually worked for them and who autistic people condemned for working for them. So no, if they were actually sorry, they would have actually left. There are things we did years ago that, due to our deeper understanding of autism today, we would never consider doing now, and for that we apologise. No, they've never made any kind of apology out to the public, out to the whole autistic community, out loud, like they do with the Light It Up Blue campaign. So if we go a bit further down. What is the significance of the puzzle piece logo? The puzzle piece originated as a symbol of autism in 1963 when it was developed to raise autism awareness long before Autism Speaks was founded in 2005. While it is still something we still use today, we regularly seek feedback and input from those within the autistic community to make sure Autism Speaks is reflective of the widest range of autistic individuals and their families and friends as possible. Actually, no, look up all the surveys you can. You can find about what do autistic people think about the jigsaw piece. And you'll find that the vast majority, well, actually every single time, it'll be somewhere between 80 and 90% go claiming, no, we don't want to be represented by a puzzle piece. That means that some part of us is missing. Over the past 18 years, we have continued to evolve as an organisation, and in 2020, we transitioned from a blue-only puzzle piece to feature a spectrum of colours representative of the spectrum of experiences those with autism may have. Now it's 2020. The reason it was the colour blue, as on the first video I showed you, is because blue represents boys, and they were still presenting autism as a boy's condition. Suzanne Wright exploited her own grandson for child exploitation and child pornography just because he was autistic. That's actually what it can be. They put their grandson, even though grandson was about 3 years old, on there with just his underwear on, out for the public to see. And this is a problem I think we've got to raise concerning non-autistic led advocacy groups of how they think we can just exploit autistic kids. No, you shouldn't be putting disabled children or children in general on the internet to be exposed to the public, especially since they cannot give consent for you to expose them. Whatever the puzzle piece means to you, we believe that our updated, more colourful puzzle piece represents inclusivity and optimism as we look towards a future of progress for those on the autism spectrum. But then what do they consider progress? Is the thing. And now we're at the prevention industry. What is the goal of Autism Speaks funded genetic research? Our work in genetics exists to help more autistic people access personalised precision care that will empower them to lead their best lives. We're going to have to pay close attention to this part. Over the last 2 decades, that still lands with Professor Alicia Broderick's book, so it's all landing up still. Autism Speaks has made significant investments. So it's still all about investments and all the board directors being capitalists in the field of autism research, treatment through our genomic initiatives, AGRE and MSSNG. These efforts have allowed the field to utilise whole genome sequencing in autism to unlock DNA secrets and guide new understandings and treatment targets. With the support of our scientific and philanthropic partners, AGRE and MSSNG have made many contributions to the field of autism research. To us, that sounds very like eugenics. You know, that's basically genetic engineering, wanting to treat genes. That's gene editing, but gene editing is not the same as eugenics, but it basically has the same goal. what is Autism Speaks' position on eugenics? Autism Speaks does not support eugenics. Our research in the genomics field exists to help advance the field so that ultimately autistic people have access to personalized precision care that will empower them to lead their best lives. Well, clearly they don't, because if you want to change someone's genes, that actually is what someone called Rosemary calls velvet eugenics. Thinking of touching the human germline. If we just go a bit further down, and right. What is Autism Speaks' stance on awareness and acceptance? At Autism Speaks, we are working towards a world where total acceptance of autistic people, beyond simple awareness, is the societal standard. We believe that awareness and acceptance are both crucial to building a better world for people on the spectrum, no matter their age, level, or need of unique identity, as well as to fostering inclusion. While we fully support and work for acceptance, it cannot necessarily replace awareness. Universal awareness of autism does not exist globally or even in the United States. Now, to point out there, of course, they're going to want to keep awareness because it's the awareness that determines what the world is going to politically think about autism. If the world changes its views about autism by changing awareness and so on, of course, they're no longer going to be the leaders of it. That's why they're against the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, because the self-advocacy, doesn't want to go the same direction as Autism Speaks. It wants to go in a different direction of what acceptance is. Their acceptance is accepts the kids once you've made them so-called normal. Now, what is Autism Speaks' stance on applied behavior analysis? Applied behavior analysis, ABA, and therapies based on it are evidence-based and the most common behavioral interventions for autism. If you remember from Alicia Broderick's book, she goes pointing out that the BACB, ABA, and so on, we're all in on it together. So why is Autism Speaks lying about it already? Because no, it's not the most evidence-based one. Studies show when implemented properly, ABA can lead to improvements in IQ, adaptive behavior, communication skills, social skills, and a reduction in challenging behaviors. Actually, no, not when implemented properly. When ABA is implemented properly, that's when it's most destructive and torturous. If you actually know what ABA is, rather than all the people doing the twisted versions of it, making their own versions up. ABA programs should be individualized to each person. So if they're individualized in every single case, that proves that the sample size is just one. So their so-called evidence is based on one person. It should be individualized to each person, and they're not a one-size-fits-all approach. Most importantly, ABA programs should not be designed to enforce or require behaviors based on social norms. Precisely, they should not be, but that's precisely what they are. So, their actions seem to show the exact opposite. All the ABA clinics around the US and so on, especially, are obsessed with the social norms. Instead, the goal should be to help each person work on skills that will allow them to become more independent and successful in short term as well as in the future. When deciding individualized goals, the individual in ABA therapy should be involved in selecting the goals. Well, they go targeting the children when the children are like 2 or 3 years old. Can the kids go making the decisions when they are 2 or 3 years old? We know that each person's experience with autism is uniquely individual and personal, including the resources and supports that they may need. Our position is that ABA therapy may not be the most effective option for everyone. So there you go, the confession right there of what autistic people are saying, that ABA does not work in the long run. but it may be for some. And if you watched a video by me recently where I listened to someone who opposes neurodiversity, he went pointing out of a longitudinal study he brought up, saying that over 180 autistic people were looked at, and only 2 out of the 180 who all went through ABA, only 2 of them ever turned out independent. And that's what all the others share. Yeah, whenever someone assesses the ABA literature, our position is our autism response team can provide guidance on the various therapy options available for you or your child so that you can make the best decision based on your individual needs. And it says evidence of the effectiveness of applied behavior analysis. But notice that it seems to be back from 2012, the example that we're sharing. If you found that in 2015, so it's not very up to date. Then what Autism thinks about vaccines. Again, do you remember Professor Alicia Broderick pointing out that Suzanne Wright died in 2016? Bob Wright was preaching that vaccines cause autism until 2016. Do you think it's a coincidence that where they've said they've removed cure from their mission, it was removed in 2016? Do you think it's a coincidence Bob Wright stopped saying vaccines cause autism in 2016 when Susan Wright died? Bob Wright was Susan Wright's husband. So clearly Susan Wright had a big hold on Bob Wright and what Bob Wright was willing to say. Do you remember some of the board directors talking about gluten and so on? And then we have all these gluten-free diets going on. So even the board directors are the ones that want all the propaganda and anti-vaccine campaigns. Still this day, they've got those who support the anti-vaccine campaign on their leadership board. Autism Speaks does, because they can make more money out of it by putting more things for sale on the market. You know, all these gluten-free diets that people believe in and just assume might be right. So there's great controversy altogether over Autism Speaks. If you just allow me to stop sharing that. So there's great controversy altogether over Autism Speaks, and Autism Speaks is not a group that supports autistic people. It supports the non-autistic parents of autistic children, and where it goes in for advocacy, so that they can advocate, not so that autistic people can advocate for themselves. So they don't provide services to help someone become a self-advocate. They provide services where they're the ones in charge. They don't want autistic people leading their own lives. They want autistic people to lead what they think is the quality of life. But then here's the thing. Quality of life is not scientific. So for them to think that you can increase quality of life through genomic research, through eugenics, and so on, already shows that they're thinking of cure autism, then that increases the quality of life. So this might explain to you why they're against the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, who actually want autistic people, who want to be autistic, who don't want to be cured, including those who don't speak. Yes, this is a common criticism I get from these people, such as from the individual who I had as a guest. He went saying, "Oh, it's always the high-functioning ones who are supporting it." Now, if you look hard enough across social media and across the internet, you'll find numerous articles by those diagnosed ASD-free who are saying, "I don't want to be cured." I've read comments of individuals saying things like, I don't have the ability to speak, I can't talk, but I don't want my autism to be cured, because if my autism's cured, I'll be a different person. I won't be who I am. It will change me entirely. So they would rather stay the way they are than change who they are for the sake of being able to speak. So, no, there is absolutely no relationship between disability and quality of life. Quality of life is entirely dependent on your own point of view. The people who tend to see themselves as someone with a negative quality of life are those who are prideful, who are always comparing themselves to other people. You know, because what makes people think you've got to be like everyone else? So those you out there saying, "Oh, this is just some little group on the side, unhinged and so on, that thinks Autism Speaks is a hate group, that thinks that Autism Speaks is so hated because of just one project or something." No, it's hated because it supports the Judge Rottenberg Centre, ABA Ongoing, all the lobbying, the Autism Investor Summit. It goes doing shock therapy still on kids, not supporting. It goes opposing self-advocacy and wants to advocate and take authority over autistic lives instead. It doesn't want autistic people to lead their own lives altogether. So Autism Speaks does not support autistic people. So it's not a minority of autistic people that sees Autism Speaks as a hate group. It's the vast majority. And remember, if you look up the jigsaw piece and so on, so how many people agree with it, how many autistic people agree with it, you'll find that the surveys show the vast majority disagree with it. So why is Autism Speaks keeping it as its logo? If they say that they support what autistic people want. Precisely. They don't actually support autistic people. It's just a big lobbying business money scam. That's why they're one of the wealthiest charities all around the globe. Actually, probably the wealthiest one. Because all their board directors are capitalists. All the organizations they work with off the edge, who they do lobbying with, are capitalists. They've got their dirty fingers in nearly every single industry. And the workers of Autism Speaks, the board directors and so on, they get money from it. It's not actually a non-profit. It should not actually be tax exempt. As I've pointed out before, ABA, the Behaviour Analyst Certification Board, works more of a cult. And Autism Speaks is part of that cult, both generating each other. So all the other industries actually get their money through Autism Speaks, commodifying, treating autistic kids like a commodity, mistreating them, sending them to the Judge Rottenberg Centre for Electroconvulsive Therapy. And that's why there's a lot of hatred towards Autism Speaks. And there's a lot more than what I've done in this last hour to go through. Yes. So please help spread the awareness about how people are using autism to make money, especially places like Autism Speaks, for Autism Awareness Week or month or day. Then just ask yourself, why is it just autism awareness for 1 month? Shouldn't be awareness be all year? Shouldn't be acceptance be all year? Really, I think we need to push for a third A and go for not just awareness, not just acceptance, but appreciation, which I call the 3 A's. Awareness, acceptance, and appreciation of autism. Because if you just hand autism up to accept it so you can put it on sale, so you can sell it to make money out of it, that's rather very wasteful and just despicably using autistic people. So if we're going to accept it, it must be accepted for the right reasons, such as for the certain abilities that come with autism, by the brain functioning in a different way, giving us a different perception of the world. We should appreciate these different perceptions that autistic people get. We should appreciate their different ways of thinking, their different ideas. We should appreciate their different abilities and so on that come with it, rather than just focusing on difficulties, such as the visual spatial skills, for example, autistic people tend to be brilliant at that. The verbal language just tends to get in the way. So rather than just being so focused on verbal language all the time, perhaps we should pay a bit more attention to their visual skills and actually appreciate their visual skills. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If you would hit like, hit subscribe, and share this with your friends, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.